Our next session today is Food for Healing. My sister here, she is my Diné sister, and her name is Denee from Tumbleweed Nutrition in Farmington, New Mexico. And her talk will be Centering Food as a Pathway to Health, Identity, and Resilience. So welcome, Denee Becks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. Yat Bene. My name is Denee. I am a Navajo registered dietitian, and I will move that out of the way so I don't run into it. And today I've worked, my name is Denee. I'm a Navajo registered dietitian, and I've worked in Native communities, specifically Navajo for the last 10 years, 15 years. Denee Becks Today we are talking about centering food as a pathway to health, identity, and resilience. I am also the CEO and founder of Tumbleweed Nutrition, and I've come to this conference to share my experience and some conclusions for all my years working in the Navajo community on the reservation. Next slide. Okay, there we go. So I grew up on the Navajo reservation in Chinle, Arizona. Raise your hands if you know where that's at. Okay, we got a few people. Yay. So my mom is from Talena Springs and my dad is from Greasewood. So if you are familiar with the Navajo reservation in the 1990s, you'll know that's way deep on the res. They call it the heart of the reservation. So that meant we didn't have easy access to nourishing foods, grocery stores, or clean water. We can probably say the same thing about those areas even now. This fueled what I do, and I wanted to share a few nuggets of knowledge I've learned while living and working on the reservation. First, the language we use about nutrition matters. Let me tell you why. I must have counseled probably over 1,000 Navajos since 2012, since I got my bachelor's and degree in nutrition. And many of my patients often came to my office feeling dejected. They often felt like whatever they did in the eyes of their providers didn't matter. They came in thinking they were a failure because they saw disappointment in their family or loved one's eyes. So they came to me thinking, well, she's a dietitian, so she's probably gonna say the same thing I've heard over and over and over again. Stop eating this, stop eating my cultural food, and also limit anything white. Who's ever heard of that? Anybody? A few of us, right? It doesn't make you feel good. So they come in thinking I'm gonna talk negatively about their food or eating choices, like I'm gonna say in my rough Navajo res voice, stop eating junk food, don't eat that. Just eat a salad. But instead, I say to them, how's your family? How are your grandkids? What are your favorite foods? And what foods remind you of your home or your community? If you stop by my table in the lobby, you guys might have already answered that question for me, so thank you. And so that catches people a little off guard because they think, well, when is she gonna break out her measuring cups, her fake rubber foods, and a nutrition label? When is she gonna start calling my food junk? And I'll admit, when I first became a newbie dietitian, that's what I did. Live and learn, right? And that's because I thought I was supposed to. That's how I was taught in school. But what I learned is that languages can either build bridges towards healing or it can deepen stigma around food and seeking care. Why should our patients come to us if they're scared of being judged? Why should they feel free to ask questions about their disease, nutrition, or condition if they think they're gonna be talked down to? And so when I started approaching nutrition education from a place of non-judgment and healing, I found that it was easier to connect to my patients. I found that I was better able to wiggle in some nutrition education while honoring my patients' entire life and their experiences. And that's what our patients and our communities want. Our communities have survived hundreds of years of trauma, and our community just wants to be heard and recognized. And when it comes to talking about nutrition, I take that very same approach. Colonization, boarding schools, and federal policies didn't just change our diets, they also changed the way Indigenous people were taught to speak about food. Terms like junk food, labeling food as good or bad, good versus bad, tends to create shame and guilt. These terms carry generations of trauma and disempowerment. When somebody eats a food labeled quote unquote bad, they may feel like they are lazy or undisciplined. This guilt can make people hide what they eat, feel hopeless about change, or even eat more in secret. And I've definitely met many elders who would hide their food under their bed because they were worried their family would take away their food. So when we use stigmatizing words such as junk, bad, or non-compliant, the new one is non-adherence, people start to believe that their food choices are a reflection of their worth as a human being. These terms start to alienate the very community we want to empower. In the dietitian world, we call that moralizing food. Moralizing food means attaching morals to what we eat. Some examples of that is saying, I was bad today because I ate fry bread. Or she's so good because she eats only salad. Instead of viewing food as nourishment, access, culture, or choice, it becomes a way of measuring someone's worth, discipline, and character. So I have this quick poll about this. So raise your hand if you've ever heard the term fry bread thighs. Anyway, a few of us have, right? When I heard that, I was like, what? What is up with that? So this is an example of how we moralize food and how it makes a person, or how it tries to define a person's worth as a human. And it sounds silly when we think about it, when we say it out loud. And my question is, do we call grandma or grandpa lazy because she makes fry bread? No. Probably not. And if we are, we probably need to be a little bit more curious about why we're saying that. So moralizing food disempowers our community. Instead of moralizing food, I believe we can describe food by its role, nutrients, impact, and meaning without implying someone is lazy, good, or bad. Using judgy words do more than describe what is on the plate. They pass judgment onto the person who is eating it. Over time, this creates shame, guilt, and even distance from our own traditional and cultural foods and customs. But food is not a moral test. Food can be memory, survival, and connection. Blue corn, squash, and beans remind us of our roots and our teachings. Fry bread, Spam, maybe commodity cheese tell a different story of resilience and hardship. Each food carries history, energy, and meaning. And when we shift our language, we shift our power. Instead of bad food, we can say, this food gives us quick energy. What's its role? Or this food provides protein. Instead of saying junk food, we can say, this food fed our families in rough times. It served a purpose. By speaking about foods in a more neutral or non-judgmental way, we honor the life and experiences of our patients and our community. And so this is called food neutrality. Food neutrality is the idea that food itself is not good or bad. It simply describes it in the most objective form and what it provides to us and what its role is in our life at that current time. Next. Okay, there we go. For example, fry bread is often the first food people bring up when they talk about good versus bad foods in Native communities. Some call it bad because it's fried, high calories, or because it came from commodity rations. Others defend it fiercely as a food of survival and identity. Yeah, fry bread's complicated. Very heated arguments. Food neutrality reminds us that fry bread is not good or bad, it just is. Yes, it's a complicated food with a dark history, but it can also symbolize connection for some in our community. Yes, it's higher in calories and doesn't have much fiber, unless we add extra whole grains like blue corn or wild rice. But it also provides nourishment to people without access to electricity or running water. Being neutral about food simply describes the role, impact, and nutrient content of a certain food without making it a test of character. By removing shame and judginess, people can listen more fully to their hunger and fullness cues, enjoy cultural foods without guilt, and make balanced choices without fear. Instead of assigning moral value to what we eat, food neutrality invites us to see foods as carrying different roles, impacts, and meanings in our lives. Language shapes the way we see ourselves. If we want to nourish holistic health in our communities, we must also nourish dignity with the words we choose about food. The second thing I learned is that food is more than its physical elements. When I went to school at Arizona State University, I was taught a very sterilized version of nutrition. I was taught half a cup of cooked rice has 45 grams of carbohydrates, 1 orange has 60 milligrams of vitamin C, and a 3-ounce cooked steak has 8 grams of fat. Oh, and I should also recommend the Mediterranean or vegetarian diet to every patient I see, because those are the most, quote, evidence-based diets. We didn't talk about if grandma had electricity or access to clean water. We didn't talk about what if grandma didn't have teeth to eat her salad. We didn't talk about what if she didn't have electricity or a fridge. We also didn't talk about what if she lived 2 hours from the grocery store and had to travel on a dirt road to get back home. So I started to take a step back and realize that the community I work with may not always have the freedom to choose nourishing foods. So what do I do about that? That's when I started to recognize the social determinants of health. The social determinants of health are the things in our everyday lives that affect how and what we eat. Does our community have safe housing, clean water, or healthy food nearby? Does our community earn enough to pay for what they need? Does our community have good schools, a safe place to play, and opportunities to learn? Do they feel safe, supported, and connected to the people around them? Do they have access to doctors, clinics, and medicine, and especially culturally inclusive medicine when they need them? In the dietetics field, there's often an assumption that people have easy access to nourishing food. My textbooks and counseling guides told me to tell my patients, eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, choose lean proteins, or eat whole grains. But the reality in many of our indigenous communities is very different. People have different reasons for eating the food they do. Grocery stores may be miles away, produce may be expensive, and cultural foods may not even be stocked on the shelves or accessible, especially for families who don't have access to that traditional or cultural knowledge. For families living with limited resources, choosing healthy isn't always an option. It's a privilege. As nutrition professionals, we have to move beyond blaming individuals for those food choices and look at the systems that shape those food choices. We should start asking our community what's actually available, affordable, and realistic for families before giving recommendations. We should ask ourselves, how do we create access and opportunities for our communities to engage with nourishing and cultural foods? We should also be practical and provide flexibility in our guidance to meet the needs of our communities. This could mean teaching people how to stretch commodity foods. This could mean using shelf-stable items creatively and balancing meals with what they already have access to. And that's what I admire about everyone in this room. I admire your commitment to your community and the work you do to advance access to nourishing foods in your own community. It's time we stop focusing on limiting foods and instead focus on increasing access to nourishing foods. What we do is an art form. As healthcare professionals, especially healthcare professionals who identify as Indigenous, we weren't taught in school how to integrate traditional and community knowledge with medical knowledge. And there are a lot more programs coming out now that's merging the two, and that's so amazing. And it takes freedom and creativity to ensure our community gets the support they need. And the structures we work in may not be supportive. So I saw a gap in how we provide culturally inclusive care, nutrition care, and I leaned on my passion to serve my community with food and nutrition. I created my company because I believe in the power of Indigenous community and the power of change. I believe our communities hold the key to building healthier lives in a way that works for us. I grew up with a keen awareness that many dietitians and healthcare providers do not look like me and may not be familiar with all our Indigenous and cultural foodways and customs and access, most importantly. It is time we started delivering healthcare and education in a way that works with us. And it builds on our strengths as a people and recognizes the history of our communities. Starting my business has helped me realize this potential. I recognize the power of building on our local food systems to increase access to nourishing and cultural foods, because that's how we will make true change in our communities. We must use our cultural and community knowledge of food to help heal our people. And above all, I believe our communities deserve nutrition education with dignity, acceptance, and above all, love. I'm grateful for the community. I'm grateful for the opportunity to combine my formal education with the lived knowledge of my community, working together to strengthen and empower my people. I'm appreciative of all the Indigenous dietitians who came before me, and I look forward to supporting each other in the future. This picture is from 2022, and it shows me getting recognition for my work in dietetics from Arizona State University, where I received my bachelor's in nutrition. To be honest, I never thought I would graduate from this university because my really sad GPA. It was really embarrassing. Let alone be named outstanding alumni 11 years later. But here I am doing thank you. But here I am doing what I love and doing it on my own terms, which is what I want for all our Native communities. We should be able to choose how we define what health means to our communities. We can do that by using our knowledge of health and nutrition and merging it with our cultural knowledge. So let me close with this one last thought. The work we do is about honoring our ancestors who passed down their knowledge of food and nutrition. Their knowledge helped our communities thrive, even in the face of adversity. This is how we use our food to heal. In closing, I have a video to watch before we move on, but I want to thank each and every one of you for your work. I'm so proud of you. A cat.
Hi, my name is Denee Becks, and I am the founder and owner of Tumbleweed Nutrition, LLC, and I am a Navajo registered dietitian, and I offer nutrition education consulting services to tribal organizations and Native-owned farms. When I was working in the clinic, I noticed there was a lack of dietitians who were available for tribal organizations. Often what would happen is that tribal organizations would request clinical dietitians to do a lot of community nutrition work. I created the business because there was a gap in accessing dietitian services, and specifically dietitians who are familiar with the Native community. That's very rare, actually. There are over 106,000 dietitians across the nation, and 0.4% identify as Indigenous or Native. And so that creates an issue when you're trying to analyze menus or do a recipe analysis, especially for Indigenous foods. And so I wanted to provide those services and be more accessible to these tribal organizations and to farmers as well. I wanted to bring that representation there in this dietetic and nutrition spaces, saying like, hey, okay, we can use what we have. We can use these activities that we do, these community activities that we already participate in. How do we use that as a base to build from there? You know, I think there's a lot of power in eating good food, and not just physically, but also socially and communally. And that's what I really enjoy about working in Native communities, is that we kind of innately understand that. In Navajo and in other indigenous cultures, it's like we've already known this. We've already known to give gratitude and to have that thankfulness for our food sources and for the people around us who are preparing those foods. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, you know, I talk so much about why it's important to have representation, because I'm gonna start crying. Because Indigenous foods matter. It matters for our social well-being. It's not just about nutrition. It's about our strength. It's about our resilience. And for me to use my knowledge that I got in college, and the reason why I spent so much time in getting my education was because I wanted to give back. Because so much has been given to me, so many experiences have been given to me, and I wanted an opportunity to provide that back to my own community.
Yeah. Thank you. If you don't know this, I'm a crybaby, so you have one conversation with me and I'm gonna start crying, so that's okay. Tears are good, right? Tears, especially with the food work that we have, it is very personal. We're working with our traumas in many instances, so definitely we can open up for questions, happy to answer them, and I'm happy to chat more afterwards. I also have 2 more breakout sessions this morning, so just plug in that. All right, so it looks like we got some questions in Pigeonhole. If you have questions, feel free to put your question in there. Question is, what advice would you give the youth who would also like to get a nutrition education in tribal communities? So I think what's important is finding a mentor, especially for youth. You know, for me, I didn't really have many Native dietitians I could lean on. There were other dietitians, but it's just a special, you know, ability to be able to talk from your experience in working in rural reservations. So I think definitely finding a mentor is going to be really helpful in kind of giving feedback or giving guidance. Like I said, it's really, you know, tough work emotionally, spiritually, physically. You know, many of my people that I work with know that, you know, I'm sweating during cooking classes, and I'm just like, you know, blood, sweat, and tears has literally built my company, and you know, youth need to see that struggle too. You know, I think that's something that's missing too, is that they need to see that that example of resilience. So, any other questions? How much time do we have? 4 minutes. Okay. What foods at Navajo Nation is the most resilient to grow in the current climate conditions? Well, we do have climate change, so who knows, right? Year to year, it's going to change. One year there may be a lot of rain. One year there may be a lot of dry conditions, and so that's kind of what Indigenous Navajo farmers are good at. And we created, you know, different strains of corn to tolerate the heat and maybe those lack of water. And so Navajo corn is going to be great, you know, some of those indigenous squashes, but we still have to consider, you know, our foods still need water. You know, if it doesn't rain, then where else are they going to get their water from? So we also have to kind of address, how do we increase access for farmers to get water? How do we work with policyholders to ensure they're getting water? So I think it takes a whole, you know, all of our different skill sets to make sure that we're growing the food that we need and taking advantage of the resources that we do have, including cultural knowledge. What advice do you have for Indigenous scholars pursuing professional fields where we are so underrepresented? Again, finding a mentor is important. And finding that gratitude that you have in working in this field, because it does feel lonely. Whenever I go to our annual nutrition conference, FNCE, I see maybe one or two other Indigenous dietitians. The video had said, there's over 106,000 registered dietitians, and less than 0.5% of those identify as Indigenous. And so if we're looking at the statistics for the national population of Indigenous peoples, at least in America, we're sitting at a 2% per capita, and it's like we can at least kind of increase that from 0.5 to 2%, because that's what's going to make the most impact in our communities. What resources do you recommend for others in the field of dietetics to improve the cultural component? I think most importantly, be present in your community. That's, in dietetics, it's very cut and dry. This is, dietetics is a science-based field. And sometimes we lean too much on the evidence-based and all that. But what's also important, especially if we want to make an impact on our communities, is be part of the community, be a community member. Even if you don't identify as Indigenous, it's important to be an active member in that community, because our patients in our community see us. They see us at the store, they see us at the trading post, they see us at the gas station. So it's important for them to see us first and foremost. And what other resources do you recommend for others in the field of dietetics? There's a lot of great books out there that I can speak to, and definitely track me down if you need a list of those books. But again, I always tell people, life is a process of learning. We're always learning, right? I'm still learning. I still have a lot to learn about my community. And sometimes I'm wrong, and that's okay, because like it was mentioned, we're all human. We're just humans dealing with humans. And it's okay to have compassion for ourselves, compassion for our community. Are you able to do we have time for one more question? Are we good? Okay. Thank you so much. Hopefully I can see you at the breakout.